So hello everyone and welcome to this next session. So it's almost 4 p.m. and I will start in a few minutes, in a minute I suppose. So just a quick reminder to everyone, please put yourself on mute once you join. So I'll just go over to the Jupyter notebook. So it's 4 p.m. and I will get started. So we had stopped yesterday at some of the basic methods. So what we were looked at is we had looked at the sort values method. We had looked at the fill any method with some basic examples, and we looked at some advanced querying, particularly if you can have mixed queries, such as these, where you can combine different queries. So in this lecture, we'll just keep going on with what we did. Only thing is we will look at some other examples. So as before, let's get started. So before I start, I'll just have a little question. Does anyone have any doubts about what we did in yesterday's class?
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, yesterday we have used this function fill any.
Mm-hmm.
So in that we have replaced all not a number value by some value.
Mm-hmm.
But by using that function, we have replaced all NaN. But we want only that year column replacement. But we have replaced like in publisher column also some NaNs are there. So that also replaced by that 1970 year. So that we don't want.
Okay, yeah. So that's we can start looking at those now. Yeah.
Okay.
So what we will do, so now that you say is, let us start looking at some extraction algorithm. So first is let us try to see how we can extract specific rows, right? So that we can then change particular values exactly the way we want. And then after that, we will look at some other more querying examples. I got a few suggestions from somebody, so we can also start looking at that. So to get started, as always, I will just import numpy as np, import pandas as pd. This is something you have to do every time you launch Jupyter Notebook. And once this is over, let me just well, let me check if this is the data set. Everything looks okay. Yes, it is. So this is our data set. So now that we talked about this, one thing we can look at is, for example, we have the name, right? We have platform, we have several, but the most important I would say is name, okay, because that is the identifier of a particular video game, because there is no special ID or anything of that sort. So now the question is, if we look at video game df, and this is a very useful method, info. Info tells you how many, some basic information about all of them, right? So for example, it tells you how many rows are there altogether. It tells you how which of them might be having null values. So you can see automatically here has some values which are not a number, because it is lesser than the total number of rows, the total number of non-null values. And also some of them, like publisher, they also have some missing values. So now the first question is, whenever you have a data set, it is important to note that you might have what is called duplicate data, right? So for example, we are seeing WII sports, and we're seeing things like Super Mario Brothers and things like that. Now, there are two things which can happen. One is exactly the same name could appear twice. Another thing that can happen is that a game can be written in very similar form somewhere else. For example, you see here, it is Super Mario Bros, right? But this is actually could be written as Super Mario Brothers somewhere else. It is the same game, right? So we have to now start looking for we have to do sometimes what is called as data cleaning. So now the first question you might ask is, how do we find out duplicate data, right? So let me just give some space, and let me write out what we're going to do. We're going to say finding and dealing with duplicate data, right? So let us first look at this column names, right? So if you look at the column name, it is what you get as a series. Now the question first is, how will you find out the number of how many of them are unique, right? For example, if I want to find out which of them are repeated and which of them are unique, you could write your own function. But again, like I said, quite often, before you start writing your own function, check if there is something inbuilt in pandas and Python. And this is such a commonly used method, such a common requirement, that there is an inbuilt method. And I'll tell you what that is. Let me just copy this and look. So there are several ways of doing this. One is you can say unique, right? If I say unique, this will do a string checking for which of them appear more than once, and it will only give you the values which appear only once, right? Now the question is, you get an array, but this array is not really that useful. There are two ways to find out how many of them are unique. One is you can just do length, correct? You can do this, or you can do something called n unique. N unique means tell me the number of unique values in this column, and you get the same value. All right, so I'll stop for a minute here and ask, does anyone have any doubts so far?
In where that is the row number 4, I think. Input 4.
Okay, 4.
So there are only 10 non-null elements here?
No, these are the columns. See, this is the column. So we have so many columns. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to 10. And we have each of them, I mean, the total number is 16,598. And some of them are a little lesser because they have not a numbers.
Okay.
So you see the range index. The range index is an object with 16,598, where it is ranging from 0 to 16,597.
Okay. And non-null values are? Number of non-null.
Yeah. So basically what this means is, non-null means that these are actual values which could have either string or could be a number.
Okay.
So if it is any n, then in that case, even though it is not exactly null or none, it is still considered to be similar to a null.
Okay. So this is not giving us a numeric number. It is just specifying the type. That's
exactly.
all.
Yeah. This just gives you overall information about your data frame.
Okay. Thank you.
So using that unique function, what we are actually trying to do, we are trying to find out two different games with slight variation in the name, but the game is the same, right?
No, here it is exact. So for example, if you look at this, let me look at the help. Why is the help not opening? So let me copy it. I think it is because it is executed. I'm trying to open the help. It's not opening for some reason. Well, I don't know. Something's wrong with my Jupyter notebook. So for example, if you just go to pandas, unique, you'll see the documentation. So if you see the documentation, this does merely what you call as, it checks exact matching of a particular number, of a particular value. So there is no, it does not check if it is very close or something. It has to be exact.
Okay.
So this is very important, that it will not. So for example, in this case, right, let's go back to this. I don't know where's my Jupyter notebook. Did I just lose my Jupyter notebook? Okay, here. So this is my Jupyter notebook. In this Jupyter notebook, it may not see a difference between Super Mario Bros. And Super Mario Brothers. It will not see that difference. It will check only if it is an exact match in string.
Okay, so what is the output of that the input 7 then?
Yeah, so the main thing is, if you look at unique, right? Unique gives you a NumPy array with all the unique values in this particular column.
Okay.
So if WII sports is repeated, it will drop the repetition.
Okay.
It will appear only once.
Okay. So what will happen with the other parameters which are listed with that name?
The
Because there
others
are
will be omitted. The others will be omitted. It will appear, it will show only the first appearance of that name, and it will drop the rest. So it will show you that these are the unique values. The remaining are repetitions.
okay, so the repetition what we are doing with the games which are repeating. So actually I'm not able to understand what we were doing earlier.
Yeah, so that is the next question. So the first thing is, let's look at what is happening. If you look at the number of unique values, it is 11,493, right? These are the unique values. And if you look at the number of columns, we have 16,598, right?
Yeah.
So that means we have almost 5,000 repetitions, right? So for example, what this means is, how do you find out the repetitions? What we can do for that, again, we have another one. We have something called value counts. Value counts will tell you which of them appear more than once. So for example, here what it does is, it takes this particular column, it will calculate how many times a particular number appears, so it will give that as the index, right? So here you see, if I say, what is the type of this? The type is a series. It is a series, but the index of the series is the name of the column. And the output, rather the data, is the number of times that this particular value appears. And it is automatically sorted in the descending order. So you see, this game, Need for Speed, is the most repeated, 12 times. So now let's keep going. I'll tell you what is now. For example, this is a series, right? Now in this series, we can, let me keep this and let me copy it. We know that there are thousands of repetitions, right? So for example, if let's say I do .ilog, let's say 100. I want to take the first 100. So now you see this gives me 100, but it's still not very easy to understand because it gives this ... because this is how it usually displays. So if I say 20, now I get something. All right. So now what I'm doing is I'm using the integer location method to extract rows of this series. All right. So does anyone have any doubts about what I'm doing so far? Okay, so now let's keep going. Now the question is, oh yeah, somebody has a doubt?
Yeah, is it possible to find out in which, what are the indexes of these repeated values? So for example, if the first one is repeated 12 times, what are those indexes?
Exactly. So that's the one, that's going to be the next one. So now the question is, we have got it in this manner here, but we want to know where this appears in the data frame, right? That is what is the most important thing, to find out where this appears in the data frame. So now how will I do that? Let's go back to the very first one, right? Let's do this value counts. Now we know that value counts is there, right? Now at the same time with value counts, what do we know about value counts? This is a series, right? So if I say in this case that this is, let's say for example, again let me copy this so that I think there's some problem with the internet today, so I'm not sure what's going on. Maybe too many people are online. But how do you extract something? Now you use the dot lock method. See, right before, like I said, there is the ilock and there is the lock. LOC means location. So for example, let's say I want to see FIFA 14. And it's giving me 9. Always remember, lock can be used for a data frame and lock can also be used for a series. I'll give you another example. Now I'm going to go a little slow here because this is actually very useful for extracting in general, right? So what this means is, let me just break this up a little. Let me take just 10. I don't need all of them. So let me just take 10. Now, let me say I know VDDF and I want, let's say, the fourth one, right? So what this means is, if I want the fourth one, then I have to specify either, there are two ways to do it. Either I can say ilock 4 and I get this fourth value as a series, or I can specify it using location. Now in location, you can do two things. You can specify the index, which is the row, and if you want, you can specify the column as well. So let's look at that. Supposing I specify 0, I will get the same result. Okay, but along with lock, so what this means is I am now extracting a row. Along with this, I can also extract a number of columns. So for example, I can say name and I can say global sales. And it gives me just these two columns. All right. So this is how you use lock. Now let's go back to what we were doing before. And that is here of using value counts, right? So we saw here that if we use value counts, we get a series, right? And the index of the series is the name itself. Okay, so what we're going to do, let us take this and let us give it another name altogether. So let's say, for example, I say duplicate, duple is equal to this one. Okay, so this is my series. Now what I want to do, I want to find out which are the games which appear more than once. All right, that's what I want to do. So how will I do that in this case? This is a series, right? Again, this is a series. So for example, if I say duplicate is greater than 1, what do you get? Always remember, you can do a simple query on any data frame or any series with just this kind of a query. What it will do, it will look for the value of the series and it will give you those rows as true when this query is true. Okay, so here I'll stop for a minute. Does anyone have any doubt? Okay, I'll keep going. Now, supposing for example, I cast it, all right, to this. What do I get? I get only those values for which it is true. Remember, if you just apply the query, you will get a series where it is true and false. So true when the query is true and false when the query is false. If I cast it to this, I get a truncated series where it is true, right? So now this is the series that we want, right? Now, how are we going to map it to the data frame, right? So first, let us look at the data frame. Let's say we say VDDF, again, let's do head. This is what we get. Now, we have to say in this data frame, we have to only extract all these games which we know exist in this series, right? So how are we going to do that? Can anyone think of something? Here it's a combined query, right? We're going to combine queries here. So it gets a little interesting. Anyway, I'll continue. So let's look at VDDF, all right? So if we say VDDF name, and what are we going to look at VDDF name? We are going to say here, is VDDF name in this list, in this series, right? So for example, how will I say that this exists? So let me look at what's going on here. If I want to say that this exists in this series, right? So for example, how will I break it up? We can look through each and every one of these and apply it as a query in this one, right? So let me just do this. VDDF, this is the series. So we are now going to combine two queries. So let's take this one and let's give it another name. You don't have to give it a name, but while you're learning, it's always better to duplicate the result. This is what we get. Now, we have to now loop through each and every one of them, and we are now going to find out where they exist here. All right. So for that, what we're going to do is this. We are going to say one, there's several ways. Now again, there's several ways to do this, right? Now, let's look at one way. Let's say VDDF, all right? VDDF, now here I'm going to use another method. All right, now here what is happening is, this is something which we will know very soon. We have looked at some, for example, we looked at some particular methods. Like for example, we have seen global sales. We have seen min. There is a min method, right? There are some methods like this. These methods apply on a particular column, on any column, or you can even have combined columns. Now, if however, you want to write your own function, how will you do so? There is another method, and that method is called the apply method. So let me first talk about the apply method. When I say VDDF name, I can apply a method to this, right? So yeah, finally my help is here. So you see, VDDF applies a function along the axis of a data frame. And the axis is usually by default 0, which means it applies it along the rows of a data frame. Now, what are we going to try to do here? We are going to then say, supposing for example, let's say here, we can do different things. For example, you can write a lambda function, or we can write a proper function. So what I'm going to do is, let me write a proper function. In the beginning, that's easier. So let me call this find duplicates. Let me take, it takes a value x, and let me just print x. All right. Now, what do I need to do when I want to apply this function? I have to say, when I say dot apply, either I can write a lambda function, or I can pass another defined function. So for example, I have defined this function, right? All I have to do is pass the function. So for example, if I say do this. Now you see what it has done. It has printed out every value of the column that it is getting. Now here I'm going to pause a minute and I'm going to ask, does anyone have any doubts? This is getting a little tricky, and this becomes almost something that you'll be doing every time when you're doing data science. You'll be applying custom functions to columns and groups of columns in a data frame. So please do ask questions if you need to.
So these duplicates are without any indices or any mapping of any sort?
Yeah. So now when you say bd.df name, right? And when I say dot apply, whatever function you are giving the column here, basically it is iterating through every row of this one column and it is passing it to this function, right? So this X takes every row of this column. That's what is happening. Now, let me just give you another example. Supposing, for example, let me copy this actually. Let me just copy this and let me place it here. Now, supposing I mix it up. Let's say I have two columns. So it's not just one column, right? So let's say I have, and I have, no, year. Let's say I have year, right? So what I'm saying is I'm extracting two columns from this data frame and I'm passing it to this find duplicates function, which takes this argument X and then prints it up, right? So let me run it again and see what we get. Now you see what we're saying. It is taking these two columns and it is printing it out. But you see, it is printing them out as a series, right? It is printing it out again as a data frame. So here I can do something else. For example, I can only take X of 0 because remember, it is taking a data frame, right? So if I say only this, right, it takes X of only the first row because it is taking index. Now here again, like I said, let me go back and run this again. You see what is coming. I am giving it a data frame. I'm passing two columns, right? So this input here is basically getting a data frame. In this case, it is getting this data frame as a series. So you see, it is taking, this is the index 0, 1, 2, 3 on the first column. This is the name, and here is the series. Here is the year. Now here I'll stop and ask, does anyone have any doubts about what I did? Basically, I'm just taking two columns of the data frame and trying to apply a function to it. So now the question is, what if I want to write only the year? I want only the year out of this, right? So I want to print only the year. If I say this, sorry. No, I didn't expect that. Oh, okay, let me just say. Oh, okay. I got what it is. There is the access thing which needs to be taken. Yeah, okay. So now let me talk about this access method. Let me look at, if you look at the apply function, look at the syntax. The first is the function, then is the access. All right. Now, what is the access? The access is 0. Okay, I just got 10 minutes left, so I'll try to wrap up. The access is 0 by default, which that means is you are always iterating along the rows, right? Now, if you pass a data frame to it, like here I'm passing a data frame. Now, when you pass X to it, right, you cannot only iterate through the rows, because remember, you're passing a data frame. You're passing a group of columns, not just one column. So therefore, when you apply this function, you have to say, look also along axis, right? Because X here is a data frame. So if you need to extract the column from this X, you have to specify axis is equal to 1, right? Now here I'm going to stop and ask, does anyone have any doubt? So it's the way to say it is, when you say axis is equal to, when you leave the axis out, it looks only along the rows, right? So for example, it takes this as a compound object. It takes it as a compound object, but it doesn't give you any handle to be able to apply to look for columns. But when you say axis is equal to 1, then it says not only is it just some object, it is a data frame that has columns. So then you can extract columns by the usual data frame method. Anyway, if there are doubts, please do ask. Otherwise, I'll just continue for now. So let's continue with this find duplicates method. I don't know if it's possible to finish off, but let me see if I can try. So we are going to apply find duplicates in this way. Now, what are we looking for? We have already calculated duplicate result, right? So what that means is we are looking for, is there a duplicate result in this, right? That means, is X, sorry, not this one, is this name appearing in duplicate results? So for example, we get the name. So how will I do that? Does anyone have any thoughts here?
You print the name from duplicate results.
Yeah, basically you have to check if this name exists in duplicate results, right? Now, there is a bit of a catch here. The catch is this name here may or may not appear in duplicate results. So for example, let's say I write this duplicate result. Now, how will I find out what that is? Duplicate results, I just have to say X, right? But this will not run, and I'll show you why. You see what? There is an error. The error is key error WII sports. Can you guess what this is? A key error. A key error appears when a key is not present in a particular thing. That's what happens. So for example, what that means is, remember, when I say duplicate results, I am taking only those values for which the instance is greater than 1. Only those values. So if this X, if this particular iterated value of X is not available in duplicate result, then you get a key error, because it is saying you are asking for something that doesn't exist. So instead, what we can do, we can look for duplicate result. So supposing I said duplicate result, now you see you get a value, right? So just checking what is duplicate. Yeah, so you see now you get a value. Now the reason why you don't get a value is because you have so many nuns. Now the question is, what if I want to check if this is greater than 1? Right? All I have to do is use this conditional statement. So what am I checking? I am iterating through every name. I am passing this name to this function. I am checking if the value, if the number of times this particular game appears is greater than 1. So let me then print out only this value. And now you see, we get something else. Now you get a value for everything. Supposing I also print out and now you see, this is what we get. Let me just scroll all the way to the top. It gives you only those values for which we are greater than 2. Greater than 1, right? So here I'm going to stop. I'm almost running out of time, so I don't think I can complete it. We'll have to run over to the next lecture. But instead, I will like to open it out and let you people ask some questions if you can. So go ahead and ask about what we did here.
Can you please explain this duplicate X? What's the logic behind using that particular array?
Yeah,
or
so
series?
basically what we are trying to do is, like I said, our objective was to be able to show in the data frame, right, which are the values which appear greater than 1, right? And I'm doing this bit by bit. So what I'm trying to do is, first I'm going to say how we can extract, how we can look in a data frame for duplicates, right? So the first thing we have to do is, we found out duplicates in a very easy way by using value counts, right? That is what duplicates was. If you go back, I'll just go back and search. We got this duplicate by using value counts. This was here. This value counts. So this is a very handy value. But duplicate counts gives me a totally different type of data. For example, duplicate counts gives me a series like here with the value of each one appearing, how many times it appears. But what I want to do is, I need to look for it in the data frame. So what do? I use the apply method and I apply a function. When I say I apply a function, it runs this function on each and every row of the column that we have specified. So basically, we are iterating through every row. We are passing the name to this function. In this function, we are taking the name. Now we are looking for this name in duplicate, right? And we are checking if in duplicate, this value is greater than 1. If it is greater than 1, that means it is a repeat. That means this particular value is being repeated in the data frame. So for now, I'm just printing it out. So does that answer your question?
Yeah. Thank you.
So we are almost out of time. You can ask another question if you have, but I can't promise we'll be able to answer it before the meeting ends.
Maybe next time just choose a very small data set, like 10 values. So it will be, I think, much more appreciable. Just a suggestion.
No, then the problem is we have to then start creating small data frames. Whereas here, this actually is just that, see, well, now we are getting into real data science, proper data science. So this is a little complicated, which is why I would like to, if necessary, take several lectures and go through it bit by bit. But rather than just rush through with some small example, which really has no significance, I would rather do it in a real data frame and do it bit by bit. Even if it takes time, no problem. Next time we can completely solve it.
Okay, got it.
So anyway, I think we are almost out of time. I would suggest take your time and look through these. Just if possible, go read the documentation of the apply method and compare it to what I did here, right? So that way you can examine what this apply method actually does, and therefore you can figure out what I tried to do here. And if possible, think about how we can do it next time. In the next lecture, which is tomorrow, I'll show you how we can actually extract values from the data frame based on this, right? So as before, I'm almost out of time, so I will stop this lecture now. So I'll upload this on YouTube and I'll send the Zoom meeting for tomorrow's meeting tomorrow in maybe in a few hours, right? So trying to stop this meeting nicely. Thank you so much.